In my case, it was death by a thousand cuts. Every time I said yes when I wanted to say no, that was one cut. And that's what led to the mind gut issue that we spoke about earlier. That's what led to the inflammation, the deficiency in vitamins, etc., etc. And it was only when I recognized that I had this tendency that I started to work on it.
Welcome to the Leader's Mindset, where we bring you conversations with leaders who are making an impact in business and our communities. Today, I'm here with Saahil Mehta. He's an entrepreneur, success coach, speaker, and author of the book, Break Free, A Guide to Decluttering Your Life. And he's going to share with us about living a zero-regret life today. Thanks for being here, Saahil.
Pleasure to be here, Jason.
So before we get into the leadership stuff and the decluttering and the zero regrets and all that, I want to hear about your hobby. I hesitate to even call it a hobby because it's so intense. Your hobby of climbing really tall mountains.
It's one of those things that started off as a bucket list item where a friend's older brother said, "Hey, we should climb Everest." And I'm thinking that's maybe not the first mountain you want to attempt when you've never done any sort of camping or hardcore hiking before. So anyway, fast forward many years, but he did plant a seed in my head, and I said, even though we can't make it to the top of Everest, how about the base? And some people think the base is pretty low, but it's still it's about 19,000 feet or something, or 18,500 feet. So it's no joke.
Is that Everest Base Camp is like at 19,500 feet or something like that. So it's already more intense than most people will ever do anything in their lives just to get to the base.
Exactly. So like I said, it was a bucket list item. And after marriage, we were thinking of planning to have kids. And I said, it's now or never. Because once we have kids, I don't know how life's going to be, how much time I can take off. And I threw a feeler out there and just asked a bunch of people who'd like to come. Luckily for me, the missus said yes. I was pleasantly surprised because it was the first of this kind of adventure for both of us. And then we had some folks out there who sent us messages asking, do they have hot towel racks, or is it possible to get a blow dry while I'm there? Nice little jokes to say no. But in the end, this is when I think I must have sent hundreds of messages out on Facebook, and one of my friends responded saying, "I'll come with you." So the three of us embarked on this journey to get to base camp. And what I didn't realize was there's this thing known as the mountain bug. And when you get bit by the mountain bug, you just want to keep going back. And so once that trip was over, I just wanted to go back. Now, we had children, so we had to wait a little while. But once the kids were of a certain age where we were comfortable leaving them with the grandparents, we then continued the journey and then since then climbed many more high altitude mountains.
Yeah, I want to be really clear about this with our audience. When you said the missus said yes, she didn't just go, "Okay, if you have to go do this, go do it and get it out of your system," right? She said, "I want to go too."
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, I was pleasantly surprised because, well, you don't know until you ask. That's a big learning lesson for me.
I love that. Can you tell us about some of the peaks you've climbed?
Absolutely. So we, after we had children, it was one of those things where I kept telling myself, "I'll do it next year. I'll do it next year. I'll do it next year." And as you know, I'm sure a lot of people on this listeners can resonate, that next year doesn't really always come. And so as I embarked on this internal journey, and we're going to get to that later in this podcast, I told myself, you keep saying next year, but it's just not happening. So sign up now. And so I said, the only way to commit to doing a mountain again is to pay. So I got in touch with this organization and we decided to climb Kilimanjaro because if you think about the 7 summits, the tallest mountain on each of the continents, the best starting point, I would say, is Kilimanjaro. It's easily accessible. It's you can afford to go slow, right? It's not harsh that way. The weather allows for it. A term on the mountain is pole pole, which in the local lingo means slow, slow. So you have that time frame and ability. So, and it's also the tallest mountain in Africa. So you can kind of check a box that you've climbed one of the tallest mountains on a continent. So we signed up for it, and when you say yes to one thing, a lot of other things fall into place. Our training regime changed, our food habits changed, because everything was now focused on getting to the summit, to climbing this mountain. And so Kilimanjaro was 2017. That was January 2017. And just to let you know the gap we had, the base of Everest was December 2010. So it was a good 6-year gap before we embarked on the next one. And that was 2 children later. So shortly after Kilimanjaro, a year after that, we did Elbrus. Elbrus is the tallest mountain in Europe, which is in the European side of Russia. 2019, we did Chopicalqui, which is in Peru. That was the tallest mountain. And as we progressed, we also chose to do more and more technical mountains. So that's the most technical that we've done. And that was our first mountain over 20,000 feet. So that was, it's probably one of the toughest I've climbed till date. COVID came along, so we had to take a bit of a break. But as soon as the borders started opening up, we went for Pico de Orizaba, which is in Mexico. That's the tallest mountain in Mexico. And funnily enough, that was the first mountain that, well, it's not funny, but it's funny now when I think about it. Not at that time, but that was the first mountain we couldn't summit. And then after that, my wife decided that she's like, listen, I'm done with the cold. I'm done with sleeping in tents. So I'm happy to do more treks or hikes or mountains, but find me a place where I can stay where it's warm at night. So I'm still on the search for that. If anyone on the audience knows of a place where I can stay in a nice lodge at a high altitude, let me know. But since then, that's kind of her last. I'm hoping she'll do one more because we didn't want to end on one where we couldn't summit. But I still continue, and I've done a couple more since then.
Yeah, I'm kind of done with the cold too, at least on a regular basis. That's why I live in Las Vegas now. So, but that's homework for you, our dear audiences. If you know a place like that, let us know, and we'll get the team back together again and get going.
Absolutely.
Okay, so now let's get into living a zero regret life. What got you on that path?
So this brings me back to a moment in 2016. I think it was partially environment, partially stage of life. Environment was, there's a lot of talk that was going around in the news, social media. People were talking about it like, what's your purpose? And so that kind of made me ask myself, what is my purpose? Why am I here? What is life all about? And at the same time, so that was the environment. And at the same time, I'd reached a stage in my life where I checked a lot of boxes of the definition of success that I had inherited. And I say inherited because what I've come to realize is a lot of people, we're all so different. We all have a fingerprint that is unique to us. No one else has the same fingerprint. Yet a lot of us have the same definition of success. And if I sum it up very briefly, it's usually a combination of wealth, financial wealth specifically, and fame. And so I checked a lot of boxes. I had a net worth, which was 7 figures. I was married, family, living in a nice big house, driving a Porsche, traveling the world, no debt. So, in my 20s, if you told me that I would reach there, I would have thought I'd be jumping up and down with joy. But the reality was I wasn't. And what I came to realize is I had inherited this definition of success from family, from society, from social media, from the media in general, from school, and so forth. It wasn't really my definition of what success means. And hence why I wasn't feeling fulfilled. I wasn't jumping up and down with joy, which is what I thought I should be doing once I checked all the boxes. And so moving towards a zero regret life means first defining what success means to you. Because as you move towards your definition of success, life becomes more fulfilling. And as you move more towards fulfillment, you're moving away from regret. Because the last thing I wanted was to wake up one day and, there's plenty of research out there. There's some common regrets that people have on their dying bed or, in the last few weeks or final year of their life. I did not want to be one of those people.
What was missing from the definition of success you inherited that ended up in your definition of success, or what did you have to take away from your inherited definition of success to create your definition of success?
Sure. Well, look, I want to start by saying that financial wealth is important. I mean, ultimately, it pays the bills, it pays for your lifestyle, etc. But at what cost? So before I would have these blinders on, and I would see some opportunity that would increase my wealth. And I would say, yes, let's go. But when you say yes to something, what are you saying no to? I was saying no to my health. My health started to decline. And, we can get into the story a little later, but one of the challenges that I faced was I almost lost my life because I was ignoring my health. I mean, it sounds very light here, but like I said, we can go in a bit detail. It also affected my family life. It affected my relationship with my spouse. It affected my relationship with my father. So these are some of the most important relationships. The kids were very young at that time, so perhaps they didn't notice too much of a difference, but it affected these two relationships. And I realized that I was doing things to offset the way I was feeling. So there would be some extreme behaviors when it came to entertainment, which now when I look back, it was just to offset some of the void that was being created in my life, as opposed to doing it purely because I want to or because it is fun.
Yeah, if you don't mind, I would like to dig a little deeper into that. What was going on? What you're willing to share about that? Because I have a feeling, based on my own experience, a lot of our audience might be doing the same thing and not even realizing they're doing it.
Well, it's like the story of the frog in boiling water, where you keep increasing the temperature, so you don't really feel it until at one point the frog dies because the water gets too hot. And I felt that that's kind of what I was going through. It wasn't something that was drastic, like an accident or a stroke or a heart attack or something like that, where it's like boom, you get hit in the face. It's a slow death, if I can call it that. Something that's progressing ever so slightly, month after month after month. So I'll talk about the health part first, because that really affected everything, because that affected my state of being. So on the health side, and what I want to say before I continue is it wasn't bad enough where I felt I needed to go see a specialist, but it was enough to be clutter in my life, if that's the best word to use. So one of the things that was happening was my body was constantly inflamed, which led to bloating. Right? So there was constant inflammation. I would have these energy dips during the day. And when I say energy dips, what I could normally do in an hour would probably take me 3 hours to complete when those energy dips were in session. And sometimes the energy dips were so low, I would become lethargic. Like I would literally fall asleep on my desk. I've fallen asleep in a restaurant. I've fallen asleep speaking to someone, on the sofa while at home. I've fallen asleep in a nightclub. And that's when I was telling you that there was almost death, was I fell asleep behind the wheel. And I still remember this. It was, first year of marriage, wife sitting next to me. She was asleep. I was driving home. I was fine. And at the one point, I just suddenly, this tiredness came. And then within seconds, eyes were closed and I was asleep. And then I wake up to the car shaking, and then it just comes to an abrupt stop. And I realized what had happened was I went off the road and I went into some rocks and trees. Thank God other people weren't involved. Thank God nothing happened to us, because every airbag came out except mine. So please, please, please wear a seatbelt, because the seatbelt saved my life that day. And if you looked at the car from outside, where it was crushed from all directions and one tire even flew off and must have gone about at least 20 feet, you think either they're seriously injured or they're dead. That's what you would think of. And it's a miracle. It really is a miracle. It wasn't our moment to go. We walked out with minor bruising. And here's the part that makes me wonder, why didn't I take charge of health earlier? Why wasn't I doing blood checks and or annual checks on a regular basis? Because it was a combination of the inflammation. So the inflammation, which is anyways mind gut connection. So mind was challenged, gut got affected, wasn't absorbing the nutrients and minerals that were necessary for the body from the food that I was eating, at least not all of them. I started having deficiencies in certain vitamins. That combination of deficiencies, and when I say deficiency, by the way, you get that scale in a blood report that it should be between X and Y. I was off the scale. It was that low. And not in one, but in two vitamins. And that causes a lot of problems. The moment I understood that and started to supplement, the moment I understood that and started to also remove foods that were harming my body. So I'd also done a food intolerance test, and I eliminated some foods that were causing disruption inside of me. And the problem is when your body's inflamed, it's a constant battle all the time. No matter what you eat and you exercise, your body is just fighting because it wants to heal. And it's focusing on the inflammation. So when I stopped eating the foods that were harming me and I started supplementing in the vitamins and minerals that were deficient in my body, the body started to work better. All of a sudden, the energy dips went away. Waking up with a heavy head and a blocked nose went away. And even though I was exercising quite a bit, I had a lot of, well, not a lot, but a bit of belly fat, and I never understood why it would never go away. All that started to go away as well because the body just started to function a lot better. And when it did, and this is the best part, Jason, when the body started to function better, I started having more clarity because I wasn't having this foggy mind. I started working at a higher optimal rate. So I was getting more stuff done in the same amount of hours. And most importantly, I felt damn good.
Yeah, it's such a powerful lesson. I think we've all been there where we know we're not feeling well, and then we start to eat a little better, we exercise, and things get a little better. But you really endured this, got through this in a very extreme way. We're glad you made it all through, and it's such a powerful lesson, and I think it's one. It sounds like it's one you took to heart, because at one point, a little later on, a few years later, you faced a choice where you were getting stretched a little thin on all the ventures you had going on, and you felt like you had to give something up. So what did you get rid of? What did you keep? And how did you make that choice?
So that really happened when I lost my father. My dad and I were business partners, if that's the best way to put it. Even though we had our own responsibilities, at least we were there to support one another, bounce ideas off of each other, etc. Now, when he passed away, which wasn't something that we were expecting, we had two businesses that were operational, and I had started a third, which was the coaching practice, speaking and writing. Now, being the newest business, that's the one in theory that I should have let go of, because the others were generating income. This was quite relatively new and was still at an early stage. But I realized that because in my definition of success, this business mattered so much to me because it was so fulfilling, working with amazing business leaders out there, being a part of their growth, watching the tools that you can share elevate someone else. I said, I can't give this up. But I also realized if I didn't give it up and I did everything the way it was done before, I would start to work more hours, less time with family, less time with health, and it probably would have led to some form of burnout. There's only so much, as I age, that energy, it just gets harder and harder to replenish that energy. So I came to the decision that I want to keep this business, but if I want to keep it, then what do I do with the other two? And what I realized is I had to make a list of everything that only I want to do or only I can do. And then everything else I need to delegate and or, through empowering others or hiring more people. And it was magical because I realized that in many cases I was actually the bottleneck. I was the block preventing the business from growing because I was involved in too many decisions. And every time a decision was paused because it needed my attention, and sometimes I could give my attention immediately, or sometimes it'd be days. So as I started to empower the teams or increase the size of the team, they started taking onus and making the decisions, which allowed me to free up my time and focus on this new business as well. And again, live with more fulfillment, because otherwise it's almost like somebody would have taken a bit of me away had I had to give up the coaching business. I would have felt it was the right thing to do logically, but emotionally, it was definitely the wrong decision.
It sounds like you had an amazing team at all of your companies that was there to be able to step up for you when you decided it was important for you to take a step back. What do you look for when you're looking to bring on or promote someone to be a leader on your team?
And what I'm about to share, Jason, is what I look for in any relationship. It's really understanding their core values. See, if I meet you for a dinner, I can impress you. It's not, I just have to pretend to be someone maybe that I'm not. It's not going to take that much effort, but put in a bit of effort, I could impress you. And I could do that at any interview. So what I do is the team, whenever I hire someone, I have the team interview for skill set and, all the other things that are necessary. But when someone gets to the final round, and that's the interview with me, I just want to understand who they are and understand their core values and make sure that their core values match our culture. Because at the end of the day, you can learn anything, but I can't change you for who you are. And I shouldn't. I should accept you for who you are. And so by understanding who Jason really is, I can then make a decision. Is Jason a right fit for this culture? Because then we can thrive. And even if you have a few loose ends and you're a bit rough on the edges, all that can be attended to. But I can't change your core values. So we always look for that.
I love that. It's so important, especially in business and when we're talking leadership, but also, keep coming to the leader's mindset for your personal relationship and dating advice. So you mentioned your dad a little earlier and we lost him far too soon. But one of the lessons you learned from him was the difference between an employee mindset and an ownership mindset. Can you talk more about that?
When you're an employee, regardless of what responsibility you have or don't have, there are laws in place to, first of all, protect, how many hours and overtime and this and that. But when you're an owner, your mindset is different, because then the success of the business directly impacts you. Now, how do you get that mindset into your employees to bring in that owner mindset? That this is not just my business, this is your business as well. Think of long-term impact of the decisions you make rather than the short one, which might just be for your bonus or for your short-term benefit. Because the decision you make that impacts the company over a 10-year period could very well be different from what will impact the company over a 12-month period. So it really comes down to sustainability, that how sustainable are these decisions that we're making today? And an owner's mindset means if a client is unhappy, don't wait for someone to tell you, just pick up the phone and do it. But then you have to give the freedom to the employees to make those decisions. And it reminds me of a hotel that I recently stayed at. I was speaking to the general manager, and he said that every staff member has a guest satisfaction budget. They don't need to ask. They can just use budget to work towards making that guest more happy. So that for me is an ownership mindset. They're not thinking like an employee, they're thinking like an owner. And of
Yeah,
course, when you push, and sorry, Jason, when you push someone to become and think like an owner, then you need to treat them like one as well. So sometimes I have a team member saying, "Oh, it's my son's, music recital. I need to leave early today." Sure, you don't need to ask me. Go ahead and do it. But I can't then say, "Oh, but you're an employee. No, you have to work till 5 o'clock." So when you want the owner's mindset coming out of the employees, you also have to give them that freedom to think and behave like an owner within the organization. And even their compensation should feel like that they're an owner.
Yeah, we used to call that big boys and girls time in the Air Force. Of, we expect you to act like big boys and girls. If you want to or need to go do something in the middle of the day, go do it. You know what you've got to get done. You know the results you need to deliver. As long as you're doing that, we can do big boys and girls time. And it's funny you mentioned that hotel chain, because we've talked about that hotel chain on this podcast before. And I want to be real clear with the audience who's new here. It's not like a $25 customer satisfaction budget. It's like, I think it's like $2,000 per customer request, and they just have carte blanche to do that, to make sure that the customers are not just satisfied but delighted at this hotel chain.
Yeah, and it's incredible because it's those small touches that make a difference between good and great service and great experience, I should say.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So if you're looking to do great experience for your customers, and if you want to create great experience for employees, these are the things we need to think about. All right. Well, I want to take a break from this. I want to play a little bit of a game, have a little fun. Are you up for a game?
Well, one of my summits in my definition of success is fun and recreation. So I'm ready.
Good, because we're going to get to your personal 7 summits in a little bit. But right now, the name of this game is Rapid Response. I'm going to ask you a series of questions, and I want you to respond with the first thing that comes to your mind. Now, don't be fooled by the term rapid. You don't need to give a one-word response. Elaborate as much or as little as you'd like. It's just a chance for us to get to know a little more about you, okay?
Done. Let's go.
All right. Saahil Mehta, rapid response round. Your time begins now. Podcast recommendation.
Well, this one naturally.
No, that's the only answer we don't allow on the podcast. But what is something you really enjoy or something you're listening to?
I like the Morgan Housel podcast because I feel that understanding finance is so important. And a lot of people, unfortunately, live a life of debt, and they're just spending so much of their life paying back debt. But when you listen to his podcast on the psychology of money, you learn some amazing tips, really simple, shared with storytelling that sticks with you. And I mean, it's made a huge impact on my life. So that's a podcast I would recommend.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know that one, but I will check that out. Debt is killing a lot of people right now. And so I think we all should check that out. What is a practice you'd like to see more people embrace?
I would love to see more people start their day off with a morning ritual that energizes them. And they don't just get up and go.
Yeah, it's so important. I have one. We've had a lot of guests who come on and talk about theirs. It's so important to get your day started off right, and our guests swear by it. And you can see the results. I will even get up 2 hours early if it means I'll get my morning ritual done before a meeting or an event, rather than not get it done fully. So,
absolutely.
Who is someone we should all be paying attention to?
Wow.
Or let's take the shit out of it. Who's someone you're paying attention to?
Okay, I've got the answer. I wish more people would pay attention to themselves. A lot of people focus outside and they're looking at others for inspiration, but all of you are unbelievable, amazing human beings. And once I started paying more attention to myself and just getting to know and honor and love myself more, life became a hell of a lot better. So that would be my one request. Pay more attention to yourself.
Great answer, especially considering the health stuff we talked about a little earlier. What is either your get pumped up song or your walk on music?
Pumped up song, Eye of the Tiger. It just gets me every single time.
Yeah, it's great. We hear that a little bit on this podcast. We don't hear it as often as you would expect, but we do hear it sometimes. Who or what is the biggest influence in your life?
I would have to say my mother. She's just been a ball of positivity, always looking at the glass as half full rather than half empty. Always saying, try, just do it. No harm in trying. You'll make it. Don't worry. Put it in your best. So just always very encouraging and just a ball of love in life.
That's really great. What is a book everyone should read?
So there's a book that I really love, which is by my mentor, Dr. Marshall Goldsmith, called What Got You Here Won't Get You There. And he basically talks about the behavioral traits that perhaps got you to a certain stage of life, but it's not the same behavioral trait that's going to get you to the next stage of life. So recognizing that and then I wouldn't say overcoming, but elevating and evolving to become a better version of yourself so you can get to the next stage.
Yep, the title says it all. It's an important lesson for all of us. I haven't read it, so I'm putting it on my list. That's the whole reason behind this game, is so I can get recommendations for things I can listen to or read or watch or whatever it is. So, best winter recreational activity?
Skiing.
All right.
For me, it's any excuse to go in the mountains, and skiing helps me to get there. So yeah, skiing.
Yeah, I grew up skiing. I don't get to do too much of it here in Las Vegas, but we do have some good areas close by in Utah that are good to go, or California. So, what is your dream vacation spot?
I'm going to say Ubud in Bali. So it's the mountainous area of Bali, and it's just green. Again, mountains. So that's my connect to the mountains. But it's green. The food is amazing. The climate is amazing. The people are amazing. It just checks all the boxes.
When we hear about people talking about going to Bali, we typically hear about the beach. And I love that. First, I didn't even know there was a mountainous area of Bali. So that's awesome. But it sounds like it's worth taking a little side trip if you're going to go to Bali to check that out.
Oh, for sure. It's lush green. It's so beautiful. The air is great. Like I said, the people, the food, just a beautiful environment.
Excellent. What is a trend you're excited about?
A trend I'm excited about is I've noticed now, when I work out, I see a lot more young people that are health focused. So I'm just glad that when I was their age, I was not as health focused as these kids. But I'm just seeing a lot more attention to self as a result of the amazing tools that we have today for tracking, for research that's been done. I mean, I myself have worn the glucose monitor. I've worn, I wear this ring to track my sleep and heart rate and etc. There's so much data that you can gather nowadays to make the right decision, that I just love these things that people now have access to, which are they're not expensive, so it's accessible to a large portion of the population. That's what excites me.
I notice the same thing when I go to the gym, when I'm out doing activities. I've noticed the same thing. A lot younger people, and they're tracking their stuff. And honestly, when the first Apple Watches came out, my dad gave me an Apple Watch as a gift. And having just even the basic information that those first Apple Watches had on them about your health, I started making different choices in my life just because the information was in front of me. And it's great to see young people doing that.
Absolutely.
All right, last one. Favorite sports team or player?
So I'm going to go with Williams. So this is in Formula One. That's my favorite team. I'm a fan because they're the ones who they were at the top of their game at one point. Then they were pretty much bottom of the pack, or at the back of the pack, I should say. And slowly but surely, through the good decisions and getting good drivers on board, they're slowly creeping their way back to the point where in a race I think it was 2 races ago or 3 races ago, one of their drivers was third on the podium, which is a huge achievement for them considering they were backmarkers for so long. So it's always nice to support the underdogs.
Yeah, everyone loves a good underdog or redemption story, and we're all particularly interested in F1 here in Las Vegas now. Now we just did our third race here in Las Vegas a couple of weeks ago. So, all right, well, thanks for playing our game. It's always nice to get to know our guests in a way that some of the other questions might not get us there. In the past, you've spoken about needing to overcome fears to make your journey. What's the biggest fear you needed to overcome, and how did you do it?
The biggest fear I realized that I had so it came from this desire to please people. And the fear was, I would say, probably twofold. It was a combination of the fear of confrontation coupled with a fear of judgment. And so as a result of that, I would generally make decisions that would please others. And although there's nothing wrong in pleasing someone else, it shouldn't be at the expense of your own health. I just want to repeat that one more time. It's absolutely fine to please other people. Nothing wrong with that. That's a beautiful trait to have. However, if it's something which is causing harm to yourself, that needs to be questioned. Because it's only, in my case, it was death by 1,000 cuts. Every time I said yes when I wanted to say no, that was one cut. And that's what led to the mind-gut issue that we spoke about earlier. That's what led to the inflammation, the deficiency in vitamins, et cetera, et cetera. And it was only when I recognized that I had this tendency that I started to work on it. Because I realized, and just recently, for example, I was on Necker Island with Richard Branson, and even you listen to him, you listen to any wonderful leader out there, the morning ritual, etc. Why do people do all these things? If you want to make an impact, if you want to make a shift, you have to work on yourself first. Where you've all heard the saying, when your cup is empty, it's hard to give, but when your cup is overflowing, you can share and give to as many people as you want. And so I realized that by pleasing others at the expense of draining my cup, I was causing a lot of harm to self. And that harm resulted in health issues, that resulted in relationship issues, because I wasn't being my authentic self. And when people got used to me saying yes when I really wanted to say no, when I did finally stand up for myself and I started to be clear on what the boundaries are for myself, people didn't like it because they were used to a Saahil who always said yes. And now all of a sudden, he's saying no. And that was tough because some relationships were lost. Some relationships that matter a lot to me, like parents, like spouse, I had to go through a very tough period. But I always tell everyone is that if you want to climb to a summit of any mountain, you have to go through the peak and the valleys. And so I had to endure this pain and go through the hard part in order to then make it to the peak.
Absolutely. And so we've mentioned this a couple of times now, from the mountain climbing, the summiting analogy. You have 7 internal summits. What are they?
So before I share mine, what the 7 internal summits are, the 7 external summits you already know is the tallest mountain on each continent. And in the mountaineering world, when you conquer all 7, it's like you've conquered the world. And so that got me thinking as I was on my personal journey that how about conquering your internal 7 summits? And rather than telling somebody what their internal 7 summits should be, because again, then it's going back to everyone having a similar definition, I would say you discover them for yourself. Here are 12 or 15 that a lot of people end up picking. If those resonate with you, great. And if there's something on there that doesn't resonate and you prefer something else, by all means, add it. It's your definition. It's not mine. It's not anyone else's. So in my case, and this is not in order of priority because I don't have it written down, so I may get the order wrong. But I'll name the first three are definitely the top priorities, which is health. That's number one. Second is family. And for me, family is defined by parents, spouse, and children. I'm talking about nuclear family as well as siblings. The third is personal growth. Then I have, and again, not in any order now, fun and recreation. The business, because I'm a business owner, so that's still important for me. Giving back, so that's social impact. And what's the seventh? In my case, I'm pretty sure I actually kept my spouse as separate. Yeah, I kept my spouse as separate. So there's family and then there's spouse. So that makes up my 7 summits.
I think that's an important distinction, is that if you have a spouse or a significant other, that's a special kind of relationship and priority versus the rest of your family, right?
Yeah, so I learned very quickly because when I was a people pleaser, I would sometimes make the spouse happy, which would upset the parents or the children. Sometimes I make the children happy, that might upset the parents or the spouse. You get where I'm going with this. It just doesn't work, and I realized that through this wonderful gentleman that I met at a retreat, and I've spent a lot of time with him. His name is Warren Rustand. He told me that in his case, he had made his spouse his number one priority. And I had a conversation with him about it. And I realized that in my case, I was going to make my spouse my number 2 priority. Because the number 1 priority is me, based on what we shared earlier. I have to have a cup that's full in order to be able to provide and be there for other people. So after me, she's my next priority. And why is that? If time takes its toll and there's a natural progression of life, my parents will pass before me. The kids at one point will leave the house, and what they end up doing, I don't know. I don't know whether they'll live in the same city, the same country, how close they'll be. But the person who's always going to be there till death do us part, literally, is the spouse. And so rather than focusing on that relationship at a future date, I want to focus on it now. And I want to ensure that she knows and everyone else in the family knows is that that's who I stand by first before I stand by anyone else. Now, even if I disagree with something she says, I'll always have a private conversation. But in front of the rest of the family, we are one.
I think that's amazing. I think those are all great things to consider as people consider their own individual summits. I'm curious, a lot of people might leave fun and recreation out of their summits. Why did you choose to put it in there?
I mean, what's the point of living if you don't enjoy life? It's really that simple. And I realize that every decision I make, I ask myself, by knowing these 7 summits, I ask, I told you before I had the blinders on. So I saw financial gain and I said, let's go. But I didn't see the impact on the other 6 summits. Now I look at the net effect on all of them when I make a decision and I ask, is this a net positive or a net negative? And if it's a net positive where the overall direction is up across all 7 summits, then I go ahead. And fun and recreation, it's not something that I do every now and again. It's something I do every single day. So there has to be something in my daily routine which is going to put a smile on my face, bring laughter, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. But that has to happen every single day. Because otherwise, like I said, what's the point of living if you're not enjoying it?
Absolutely. I think that's great advice for all of us. So I think everyone ought to consider that as they think after they watch the rest of this episode, they think about their own internal summits. Think about fun and recreation as part of that. Are there any other lessons from climbing that have translated over to business and leadership?
Oh, so many. But I'll share one because, in the interest of time and our time together, one is around communication. So I always tell people that when you're in the mountains, You don't have these four walls. You can't control the lighting, the room temperature, which is protecting you from the outside. You feel you're in control. When you're out there on the mountains, you're at the mercy of Mother Earth. You don't have your four walls. You can't put your AC or heating on. The weather can suddenly shift. You're just not in control. Now, if you communicate incorrectly or inefficiently in your office or at home, what's the worst that can happen? A lack of productivity because someone does something incorrectly. Maybe someone gets upset. You might get fired. You might lose some money. I don't know. It's not the end of the world. But if you get communication wrong on the mountains, that could lead to grave danger and or death. And so I ask and I encourage people, how do you bring that mountain mindset into your daily life where you communicate in a way where you ensure the other person understood exactly what you were trying to say? And you listen, so it's both ways. You listen so that you understand exactly what they are saying. Because when you get that right, so many challenges will disappear from life, because I honestly believe most problems in the world today are a direct result of miscommunication.
Great advice. So tell us about the book. Why did you decide to write it? What did you want to share with the world?
I never thought I would be an author, Jason. It was, I don't, and this is perhaps a self-limiting belief at the time. I used to tell myself, out of all the subjects in school, I aced all of them except English. That was the only subject where I didn't get an A. So I'm not a writer. But that was a limiting belief. What I realized was, as I was going on my journey, people were getting curious because they were seeing a big shift in me. They saw the energy shift. They saw health getting better. They saw results. And they said, Saahil, what's going on? Like, share your secret sauce. And so I started to share in a small group. A small group led to stages, led to international stages. And then I realized not everyone has access to me, because I may not be in the city where they are. They may not be able to afford to come and listen to me speak. And so I realized that by writing a book, it kind of gives a low entry point from a financial perspective to anyone to be able to purchase and understand the framework so that they can identify and eliminate clutter in their life. And so I started writing the book, and I still remember this day. It was the last opportunity where I could back out, right? Once I clicked send, that was it. Then it was going into publish. And again, all those thoughts started coming in my head. You're not a writer. What makes you think you have a story that's good enough to share? What if people critique your book? And then a little voice inside of my head said, Sahil, would you be happy if one person had a better life because of this book? To which I answered yes. I said, well, then just do it. That's all that matters. You impacted someone's life in a positive way. What more can you ask for? But here's the thing, Jason, which is what I didn't realize. The first person that book impacted was me. And so I always encourage people that you all have a book in you. Whether you end up publishing or you don't publish it, it doesn't really matter. But write that book. Write your story. It's such an amazing journey, and you owe it to yourself. So I hope these words encourage the audience to pick up a pen or their keyboard and start typing and just write any story that resonates with you. Doesn't matter what anyone thinks about it. Just do it for yourself.
Absolutely. It's so important for us to share what we've learned, what we've been through, our successes, our failures, and whether you want to write it down as a book, whether you want to start a podcast, whether you want to just start recording things on your phone in video form, get out there and do it. So speaking of doing it, I understand you're working on a new book. What can you tell us about that?
The title is to be confirmed, but the working title is Define Success on Your Terms. And it's essentially a book targeted at business owners where I will take them through, along with my co-author, who's my mentor, Dr. Marshall Goldsmith. So we're writing this together, where we've also done a study of over 100 business owners to understand the behavioral traits that are also getting in their way of success. So the first part of the book is define success for yourself. So that's where they'll understand the internal 7 summits and define it. Because once you have that, you have clarity. It makes decision making a lot easier. The second part of the book is going to focus on the research that we're currently conducting, where we list the most common behavioral traits that are holding business owners back. And some of them they may not even recognize until they read it and they go, that actually sounds like me. I should do something about it. One that many can probably resonate with is always available. Every time a phone rings, an email comes, a message comes in, you pick up, you reply. And then are you the one who's in control of your schedule, or are you more reactive as a result of everyone trying to get a piece of your time? Others are business first, ignoring health and family, perhaps. So these are some of the things that are popping up in the research and we're excited to share some stories from business owners around that as well. So that's the second part. And the third part of the book is, how do you ensure that you take a step forward every day? It's not about leaps. It's not about huge jumps. It's just put your left foot in front of your right foot today. That's it. Just one step. And if you keep doing that day after day after day after day, eventually you make it to the summit. And so it's all these various tools that ensure that you have momentum. So that's the book. It should hopefully be out this time next year. Super excited about it. Business Define Success on Your Terms. That's the working title. But we're going to come up with a different one. But that's just the working title. Yeah.
You'll probably go through about 10 or 12 of them and come back to this one at some point, but I'm sure you'll get a great title for it. I can't wait to read it. I really enjoyed your first book. I'm looking forward to this one, and we'll have you back on the show when that one's out.
Absolutely, Jason. It would be a pleasure.
What's coming up for you in the next few months besides working on the book?
I have a TEDx talk coming up in Princeton, and the title of that is How People Pleasing Almost Cost Me My Life. So it's a little bit about what I discussed on this podcast a little earlier, but I'll be going into the details of the impact on people pleasing and sharing some facts and figures and then tools that people can start implementing to overcome that. Because what I realized through the research I was doing, over 50% of Americans are struggling with people pleasing. So it's not a small fraction. It's actually a large chunk of the population.
Well, I can't wait to get a look at that as well. And speaking of tools we can use, for everyone watching or listening right now, what's something we can start doing today to live a zero regret life?
I'll share one tool. I call it an evening reflection, which generally takes about 2 to 3 minutes. So I'm not giving you a tool that will take up a lot of your time. It's just you keep a small diary, or you can put it in your phone if you prefer, or a notepad. Ask yourself on a daily basis before you go to bed or sometime in the evening, what drained my energy levels today? And the second question is, what elevated my energy level today? And as you answer that question on a daily basis, you will start to see patterns. That every time a certain type of occurrence happens, it drains your energy, and vice versa. And then that's the one that keeps draining your energy, that's clutter in your life, because that then highlights to you something that you can address that can be eliminated or reduced so that the draining of energy goes down. And then the stuff that elevates your energy, you can then ask yourself, well, clearly every time I do this, whatever that is for you, it elevates your energy. Well, then how can I do more of that in my life every day? So this is a great exercise to eliminate and to amplify the things that bring you joy and eliminate the stuff that doesn't.
Well, I am definitely adding that to my evening routine. Yes, I actually have an evening routine in addition to the morning routine. I don't think any of us are too busy to take that small step to take care of ourselves every day. So this has been so amazing to have you today, Saahil. Where can everyone find you so they can thank you for joining us today? Where can they find the book? All that kind of stuff.
Well, a great place to start is my website. So that's www.saahilmehta.com. That's SAAHILMEHTA.com. From there, you'll have the links to the social media sites. You'll have links to where you can purchase the book. And what's on there right now, which is a great tool, is there's a mental wellness quiz. And just by spending a couple of minutes, you can answer a few questions, and it will share some great feedback, which hopefully can enable you with some tools that you can implement in your life to improve your mental well-being.
All right, fantastic. We'll all go check that out. Thank you again for joining us today, Saahil. I want to thank all of you for watching and listening today. If you found this conversation valuable, go ahead and share it with someone who can use it. Leave us a comment. Don't forget to subscribe. And if you're on a podcast platform and you're able to leave a review, we would love it if you would give us a 5-star review. That helps us build the audience and get these great conversations out to more and more people. We've got lots more amazing leaders coming your way. So go out there, do great things today. Onward and upward.